Human led an alien girl through the rolling smoke. Her quiet nod at the end spoke more than thanks. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Ethan Parker, a man of few words, stood at the edge of the narrow alley, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene before him. The smoke was thick, rolling in clouds of ashen gray that seemed to have swallowed the entire street. The faint smell of burning metal and dust stung his nostrils. He shifted the heavy duffel bag on his shoulder and adjusted the straps of his jacket, trying to block out the swirling fog that made it difficult to see. The world around him felt heavy, as though the weight of the moment pressed down on his chest with every breath. He was no stranger to danger, but this felt different. The thick smoke from the fire was disorienting, obscuring everything beyond a few feet ahead of him. In the midst of it all, he saw her. Zara, the alien girl. Her green skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and fear. She wasn't used to the heavy atmosphere of Earth. Ethan could see it in the way she stumbled, her steps unsure as she tried to navigate the smoke, her body shivering from the unfamiliarity of the situation. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward, his boots crunching against the wet pavement as he approached her. He didn't say a word. He just offered his arm, and after a moment of hesitation, Zara took it. They moved through the smoke together, with Ethan guiding her step by step. The smoke swirled around them, thick and relentless, but Ethan remained steady, his eyes focused on the path ahead. He wasn't sure why he felt compelled to help her. Perhaps it was because she seemed so lost, so out of place. Or perhaps it was because, despite her alien nature, she reminded him of someone he once knew. The moment passed in a quiet kind of camaraderie. They didn't speak much. The smoke made it difficult to breathe, and the tension in the air seemed to leave little room for words. But with every step, Zara's grip on Ethan's arm tightened just a little, a silent acknowledgement of his presence, his assistance. They finally emerged from the smoke. The world beyond was clearer now, the street ahead bathed in the glow of the evening lights. Zara looked up at him, her eyes full of gratitude, but she didn't say a word. She simply gave him a quiet nod, one that seemed to speak volumes more than any words ever could. It was a nod of thanks, of understanding, of a bond formed in the midst of a crisis. Ethan's chest felt lighter. Sometimes, action spoke louder than words, and in this case, Zara's silent acknowledgement meant more than anything he could have hoped for. The moment lingered between them, unspoken, but felt deeply. With a soft sigh, Ethan nodded back. It was enough. The smoke had started to thin, but the air still felt heavy with the lingering scent of burning debris. Ethan Parker, now walking a few paces ahead, could still feel the weight of Zara's presence beside him. The quiet connection they shared in that brief moment before, when the rolling smoke had been their only barrier, had left a lingering warmth, though unspoken. Zara, the alien girl with the shimmering green skin, moved cautiously beside him, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. Despite her alien features, there was something profoundly human about her in that moment. She was out of place, unsure, and in need of help, much like any human might be in an unfamiliar environment. As they walked, Ethan kept his gaze forward, leading her toward the safety of a nearby alley, far from the dense smoke. They had not said a word since the quiet nod she had given him, but the silence between them had never felt more comforting. It was the kind of silence that spoke of trust and understanding. Zara's footsteps were light, almost hesitant, as if she was still processing the enormity of the situation. Her eyes flicked from the ground to the towering buildings around them, trying to make sense of the strange world she had found herself in. Ethan could feel her tension in the way she kept glancing around. She wasn't used to Earth, and it was clear that everything about it, the air, the people, the atmosphere, was foreign to her. Ethan, on the other hand, had lived in this world his whole life, though he often found himself in situations that made him feel like an outsider. But there was no time for him to dwell on that now. Zara needed guidance. The city felt eerily quiet, with only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional footsteps of passers-by breaking the stillness. Ethan led Zara into a small cafe at the corner of the street, a place he knew would offer refuge for a moment. As they entered, the warm air wrapped around them like a blanket, a sharp contrast to the cool, smoky outside world. Zara's eyes widened as she took in the cozy interior, wooden tables, the scent of freshly brewed coffee, and the gentle murmur of conversations around them. It was a stark difference from the chaos they had just left behind. Ethan motioned for Zara to sit, and she hesitated for a moment before following his lead, her movements still cautious. He sat across from her, watching her carefully. Zara looked at him, the deep purple of her eyes studying him with curiosity, as if trying to read his intentions. "Are you all right?" Ethan finally asked, his voice soft, breaking the silence that had lingered too long. Zara didn't answer immediately. She simply nodded again, that same quiet acknowledgement that had become their form of communication. Ethan couldn't help but smile slightly. "I guess a nod speaks more than words sometimes," he said with a quiet chuckle. Zara's lips twitched, but it wasn't quite a smile. Instead, her eyes softened, a silent understanding passing between them. For a brief moment, they sat in quiet companionship, two individuals from entirely different worlds finding a sliver of connection in the chaos. As they waited for their drinks, Zara seemed to relax slightly, though the wariness in her posture never fully disappeared. Ethan, ever the quiet observer, knew that she had not yet fully trusted him. And that was okay. Trust wasn't something that could be demanded, it had to be earned. The silence was comfortable, though, the kind of silence that filled the space between two people who didn't need to speak to understand each other. Ethan could feel the warmth of the cafe seeping into his bones, the tension of the past hours slowly fading away. But he knew this moment of peace would not last forever. The world outside was still a place of danger and uncertainty for Zara, and it was his job to help her navigate it. No matter how uncertain the future felt, one thing was clear: he wouldn't let her face it alone. As they sat in the cafe, Ethan couldn't help but notice how Zara, the alien girl, seemed to gradually let her guard down. Her posture had softened ever so slightly, though she still held herself with an air of caution. Ethan sipped his coffee, the warm liquid a welcome contrast to the cold outside. He glanced over at Zara, who was now staring at the steam rising from her own cup, lost in thought. "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to," Ethan said, his voice gentle. Zara's eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, the tension between them felt like it had dissolved into the warmth of the room. She nodded, acknowledging his words without speaking. Ethan wasn't sure if she fully understood what he meant, but the quiet acknowledgement felt like progress. It had been a while since he'd found himself in a situation like this, taking care of someone who clearly didn't know how to navigate this world. Zara wasn't just an alien to him. She was someone struggling to find her place in an unfamiliar, chaotic environment. "It's all right," Ethan continued, his tone steady. "You're not alone in this. Whatever you need, I'll help." Zara looked at him again, her eyes still filled with uncertainty, but there was something else in them now, something resembling trust. It wasn't a big shift, but Ethan could feel it. The journey had only just begun, and she had a long way to go before she felt truly safe in this world. Outside the cafe window, the city seemed as bustling and unpredictable as ever. The world outside was full of noise, movement, and people living their lives with a rhythm that felt so foreign to Zara. Ethan could see it in her eyes as she watched the world pass by. She didn't belong here yet, and he couldn't blame her. The city was overwhelming to anyone, let alone someone who had never been to Earth before. "How long have you been here?" Ethan asked, his curiosity about Zara's past growing. Zara shifted slightly in her seat, a soft breath escaping her lips. She hesitated, clearly unsure whether she wanted to share anything with him yet. But after a moment, she answered in a voice just above a whisper. "A few days," she said simply. Ethan nodded, not pressing her further. There was no need to rush things. She would open up when she was ready. "A few days, huh? Well, I guess that's just the beginning then." He smiled lightly, trying to ease the tension. Zara's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles, though it quickly faded. It was clear that she had been through a lot in such a short time. Ethan could only imagine the fear and confusion she must have felt, being thrust into a completely unfamiliar world. You'll get used to it, Ethan added softly, his gaze drifting out the window for a moment. It's not easy at first, but you find your way eventually. You just have to take it one step at a time. Zara looked back at him, her expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a glimmer of hope. Ethan wasn't sure if she believed him or not, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was here, and for now, that was enough. The air between them felt less heavy now, as if the simple act of sharing space together had started to build something, a quiet understanding. The cafe was still bustling, but for the first time since they had entered, Ethan felt at peace. Zara seemed to be settling into the rhythm of the moment. The world outside, with all its noise and confusion, didn't feel quite so intimidating anymore. For the first time, there was a sense of calm between them, and Ethan couldn't help but feel that it was the beginning of something important. In that brief silence, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. He would help Zara through this strange world. Whatever it took, he wouldn't let her face it alone. The days that followed felt like a strange blur. Ethan and Zara had fallen into a rhythm. The world around them continued its frantic pace, but within the small moments they shared, there was an unspoken understanding, a quiet comfort that neither of them had anticipated. As the hours passed, Ethan became more attuned to the subtle signs Zara gave him, the small, lingering glances when she didn't quite understand something, the way she would lean in just a little closer when he explained things to her. It was as if she was slowly learning how to trust him, one step at a time. One afternoon, Ethan found himself walking down the street, Zara beside him. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the pavement. The city around them seemed more alive than ever. People hurrying to and fro, the hum of conversation filling the air. But Zara, for the first time since they met, wasn't looking at the ground or the people around them. Instead, she was watching the sky, her eyes wide in fascination. "You've never seen the sky like this, have you?" Ethan asked, his voice soft, almost as if he were speaking to himself. Zara shook her head, her hair glinting in the fading light. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was something in her words, something that made Ethan pause. He looked up at the sky, the hues of orange and pink stretching across the horizon. For a brief moment, the chaos of the city faded, and it was just the two of them, standing together under the vast expanse of the Earth's sky. "It really is," Ethan agreed. "It's easy to forget how beautiful the world can be when everything's moving so fast." Zara didn't respond immediately, but her gaze never wavered from the sky. It was clear she was processing something, perhaps the overwhelming difference between Earth and her own home. "Do you miss your planet?" Ethan asked after a moment. It was a question that had been on his mind for some time now, though he wasn't sure how to phrase it without intruding. Zara turned her eyes toward him, and for the briefest of moments, her expression shifted. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, sadness, perhaps, or longing. But she didn't speak. Instead, she just nodded, a soft acknowledgement of the question. Ethan didn't push. He didn't need to. He understood, in that moment, that Zara wasn't ready to share everything. She had been through so much already. There was no need to rush. Instead, he offered her a small smile, one that spoke of understanding. The next few days continued much the same. Ethan would guide Zara through the city, helping her navigate the strange new world around her. They would visit parks, sit on benches, and watch people go by. It was a quiet existence, but it was enough for now. There were moments when Zara would speak, soft words about her world, about the stars she had once seen with her family. And in those moments, Ethan would listen. He would listen because he knew that sometimes, the most important thing you could do for someone wasn't offer advice or guidance. Sometimes, it was simply being there. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet corner of a cafe, Zara turned to Ethan, her eyes searching his face. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. It was the first time she had spoken those words to him. Ethan met her gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to slow down. "You don't have to thank me," he said quietly. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." But Zara's expression didn't change. There was a depth to her words, a quiet weight that made Ethan realize how much she truly meant it. He smiled, not because of the words she said, but because of the trust that was finally beginning to form between them. It wasn't just about helping her survive on Earth. It was about understanding her, about learning to be present for each other. The road ahead would be long, and the world was still a confusing, overwhelming place for Zara. But for the first time, Ethan felt certain of one thing. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The days continued to pass with a comforting routine, though Ethan knew that the calm wouldn't last forever. They had found a quiet rhythm in their lives, Zara adjusting to Earth in small steps. Sometimes, she would linger in the parks, watching children play, or study the strange human interactions around her with a curiosity that was both innocent and perceptive. Ethan, ever the observer, found himself marveling at her ability to adapt, despite how out of place she still felt. Zara had come a long way since the first day they met, but Ethan could see the struggle that remained. It wasn't just the foreign world that made her uneasy, it was everything that had happened before. Her past was a story she wasn't ready to tell, and he wasn't in a hurry to force it out of her. But one evening, as they sat on a bench in a small courtyard, the air cool and quiet, Zara turned to him. The sky above was fading from deep blue to starry black, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the city felt peaceful. "Ethan," she began softly, her voice almost lost in the breeze. "I don't know what to do." Her words were a quiet admission, almost as though she was speaking to herself more than to him. Ethan tilted his head slightly, his attention fully on her. He didn't respond right away, waiting for her to continue. Zara looked down at her hands, twisting them together in her lap, the soft glow of the streetlights casting shadows across her face. "Everything is so different here. It's hard to even understand what's real sometimes. I don't know if I belong." Ethan remained silent for a moment, processing her words. He could feel the weight of her uncertainty, the deep-rooted fear of not knowing where she stood in this strange world. He had seen it before, when people were forced to leave everything they knew behind. It was the feeling of being adrift, unsure of where the shore was. "You do belong," Ethan said quietly, his voice steady but soft. "You belong because you're here, and that's enough for now." Zara glanced up at him, her violet eyes searching his face, and for the first time, she allowed herself to look vulnerable. It was a brief moment, but in it, Ethan saw the crack in her armor, the human need for connection, for reassurance. "But I don't know who I am here," she whispered, the weight of her words heavier than he expected. Ethan leaned back slightly, his hands resting on the bench behind him. He could see the struggle in her face, the longing for something more than just survival. She was searching for a sense of purpose, something she could hold on to, something that could help her navigate this strange new world. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, not in a challenging way, but in a way that invited her to explore the question. Zara was quiet for a long time, her gaze distant as if the answer was buried deep within her. Ethan didn't rush her. He simply waited, letting the silence settle between them. Finally, Zara spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "I'm someone who doesn't belong, and I'm afraid of never finding where I do." Ethan's heart ached for her. He knew that feeling all too well, the fear of being lost, of not having a place to call your own. "We all feel that way sometimes," he said, his voice softer now. "But it doesn't mean it's forever. You're not alone in this." He reached over and placed his hand gently on hers, a simple gesture that spoke volumes more than words could. Zara looked down at their hands, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. She let herself feel the warmth of his touch, the unspoken comfort in it. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The moment lingered, the city sounds distant, the weight of the conversation still hanging in the air. But for now, they were together in the quiet understanding of it all, and that was enough. The following days brought a new sense of calm for both Ethan and Zara, but it was a fragile kind of calm. It was like the quiet before a storm. Neither of them knew exactly what would come next, but they had learned to appreciate the stillness, the rare moments of peace in between the chaos of their worlds colliding. Zara had slowly begun to adjust to Earth, though it still overwhelmed her at times. The sounds of the city, the crowded streets, the hum of voices, it was all so different from her home. Ethan watched as she carefully navigated this new world, her movements tentative but becoming more confident. One evening, as they sat on a park bench, the city lights flickering around them, Zara spoke again, her voice softer than before. "Ethan," she started, her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her jacket. "How do you do it?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, not sure he understood the question. "Do what?" How do you live with so much noise? So much movement? Zara asked, her eyes scanning the bustling scene around them. The park was filled with people walking dogs, chatting, and enjoying the evening. Yet Zara's expression remained distant, as if she was still trying to find a way to fit into this chaotic environment. Ethan chuckled quietly, leaning back against the bench. I don't know, he replied honestly. I guess you just get used to it. Life moves fast, and you either move with it or get left behind. Zara frowned slightly, her gaze still fixed on the people around them. I don't think I can ever get used to this, she said softly. There was a vulnerability in her voice, a softness that Ethan hadn't heard before. It was as if she had admitted something that she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Fear. Fear of not belonging. Fear of never being able to find her place in a world so different from her own. You don't have to get used to everything all at once, Ethan said gently, trying to offer some reassurance. It's okay to take your time. You're not expected to have it all figured out. Zara turned her head to look at him, her expression thoughtful. But what if I never do? What if I always feel like I'm just floating? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart ached for her. He could hear the uncertainty in her words, the weight of her fear pressing down on her shoulders. But he knew there was no easy answer, no way to instantly take away the doubts that plagued her. All he could offer was his presence. You're not alone in this, Ethan said quietly, his voice steady. It's not about having it all figured out. It's about finding the strength to keep going, even when everything feels unfamiliar. And I'm here. I'll help you through it. Zara didn't say anything for a long while, and Ethan wasn't sure if she believed him. But then, she turned her eyes back to him, her gaze softening. Thank you, she whispered, the words barely audible, but carrying so much weight. Ethan nodded, feeling the quiet connection between them deepen. It wasn't just about guiding her through the city, through this strange new world. It was about being there for each other, even in silence, even when words weren't enough. The world outside still felt overwhelming for Zara, but in this moment, with Ethan beside her, it didn't feel quite as impossible to face. They sat there for a while longer, watching the city go by. There was no rush, no need to speak. The peace they shared in that moment was enough. Slowly, quietly, they had begun to build something more than just a bond between a human and an alien. They had started to build a trust that would help them both navigate the uncertain future ahead. The days continued to pass quietly, but as they did, the reality of Zara's situation began to weigh on her more heavily. Ethan could see it in the way she would sometimes withdraw, her gaze distant, her movements slower, as if she were carrying an invisible burden. Though she had come a long way since their first meeting, there was still so much she struggled with. One afternoon, as they walked through the city's central park, the sun warm on their faces, Zara stopped suddenly, her gaze fixed on a group of children playing with a ball nearby. Ethan, walking beside her, noticed the way her eyes followed them, her expression softening. Do you miss them? Ethan asked, keeping his voice gentle. Zara blinked, looking back at him, as if pulled from some distant thought. Miss who? She asked quietly. Ethan nodded toward the children. Your people, your family. Do you miss them? Zara's face tightened slightly, a small sigh escaping her lips as she looked down. I miss them every day, she said, her voice barely audible. It was the first time she had spoken so openly about it, and Ethan could hear the heaviness in her words. I don't even know if they're still out there. I came here alone. Her voice cracked ever so slightly, but she quickly regained her composure, as if unwilling to let herself break down completely. Ethan felt a surge of sympathy, but he didn't know what to say. He could understand the pain of feeling lost, of being separated from everything familiar, but this was different. This wasn't just homesickness. This was the weight of displacement, of being torn from everything and everyone she had known. You're not alone, Ethan said softly, reaching out and touching her arm gently. Not anymore. Zara didn't respond immediately, but she didn't pull away either. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes still distant. Ethan watched her, unsure of what more he could offer. He didn't have the answers to her questions, and he didn't know how to make her feel whole again. But he was here, and for now, that was enough. The silence between them stretched on, but it was a quiet that felt more comfortable now, less strained. I'm not sure I'll ever feel like I belong here, Zara said after a long pause, her gaze still fixed on the children in the park. I don't understand them. I don't understand their world. Ethan thought about it for a moment, trying to find the right words. Maybe you don't need to understand everything right away. Maybe it's enough to just be here, to take it one day at a time. You don't have to figure it all out today or tomorrow. Zara glanced at him, her expression unreadable for a moment, before she gave a small nod. One day at a time, she repeated, as if testing the words. Ethan smiled. Exactly. The rest of the walk was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Zara seemed to be lost in thought, and Ethan didn't press her to talk anymore. He knew that, sometimes, silence was the best companion for someone who needed time to process. As they neared the edge of the park, Ethan noticed Zara was walking a little bit closer to him than usual. Her pace had slowed, and she seemed to be taking in the world around her more carefully, as though she were seeing it with new eyes. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, she was beginning to find her place in this strange new world. The thought made him smile quietly to himself. They may not have all the answers, but they were in this together, and that was enough for now. The weeks continued to unfold with a quiet, unspoken rhythm. Ethan had begun to notice changes in Zara. The tentative steps she took in this strange world were becoming more assured, and though she still carried the weight of her past, she was beginning to open up more. Each day brought new challenges, but also small victories. They had taken to spending more time in the city, walking through different neighborhoods, exploring parks, and visiting quiet cafes. These outings, though simple, were Zara's way of adjusting, learning how to coexist in a world that was not her own. One afternoon, as they strolled through the city's art district, Zara paused in front of a gallery. Her gaze lingered on the paintings displayed in the window, her eyes tracing each brushstroke as though she could feel the emotions behind them. Ethan, always observant, noticed the intensity in her expression. "Do you like art?" he asked, his voice casual but curious. Zara turned to him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I don't know," she said softly, her eyes still on the paintings. "Back home, we didn't have art like this. Our stories were told in other ways, through songs, through symbols in the stars." Ethan looked at the artwork again, then back at Zara. "I can see how that would be different. But art is a way of expressing what words sometimes can't, don't you think?" Zara's gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed lost in thought. "I think I understand," she murmured. "There's something about the colors, the shapes. They make me feel things. Things I can't quite explain." Ethan smiled gently. "That's the beauty of it. Art doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be felt." Zara turned to him, her violet eyes searching his face. "What about you? Do you feel things when you look at it?" Ethan shrugged, looking at the paintings as well. "I suppose so. Sometimes it's not even about understanding. Sometimes it's just about letting yourself experience something without questioning it." Zara nodded thoughtfully, as if the idea were settling into her mind. They stood there for a few moments longer, taking in the art, the silence between them comfortable, shared. After a while, Zara spoke again, her voice quieter now, almost to herself. "I'm starting to think, maybe this place doesn't feel so alien to me anymore." Ethan's heart skipped a beat at her words. It wasn't a declaration of belonging, but it was a step, a sign that she was beginning to find a place for herself here, even if it wasn't the same as where she had come from. "You're not alone in this," Ethan said softly, his voice steady. Zara glanced at him, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I know," she replied, her voice gentle. "And I'm starting to think that maybe that's enough for now." The rest of the walk was quiet, but it wasn't uncomfortable. There was a sense of peace between them, a mutual understanding that, though their paths were different, they were walking them together. As they made their way back to the cafe where they had started, Ethan couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of hope. Zara was still figuring things out, but the progress she had made was undeniable. There was still a long road ahead of them, but for the first time, it didn't feel as daunting. As they reached the cafe, Zara stopped and looked at him, her gaze thoughtful. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "For everything." Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading through him. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "I'm just here." And for the first time in a long while, Ethan truly believed that being here, being with her, was enough. The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, Zara seemed to find her place in this chaotic new world a little more. Ethan had watched her grow, not just in her ability to navigate the city, but in the way she began to embrace small moments of joy, things that she had once found overwhelming or strange. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living. They spent their days in a comfortable routine, Zara learning more about human life, and Ethan finding comfort in her presence, the quiet companionship they shared. There were days when Zara would sit quietly in the corner of their apartment, her eyes gazing out the window at the city skyline. On those days, Ethan could see the weight of her thoughts, the longing for something she had lost. But there were other days when Zara laughed at the simplest of things, or when she got lost in the pages of a book she was reading, her curiosity about Earth growing every day. One evening, as they sat together in their favorite cafe, Zara looked across the table at Ethan, her expression more serious than usual. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice almost hesitant, "do you think I'll ever truly belong here?" Ethan looked at her, taking in the uncertainty in her eyes. It was a question he had heard in her voice before, but this time, it felt different. The doubt was still there, but it was not as heavy as it had been. "I think you already do," he replied, his voice steady. "You're here, you're learning, and you're making this place your own in your own way. Belonging isn't about fitting into a mold. It's about finding your space, and I think you're doing that." Zara's eyes softened at his words, and for a moment, the weight of her uncertainty seemed to lift. "I don't know if I'll ever stop missing my home," she said quietly, "but I think I'm starting to feel something else. Like maybe this could be home, too." Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading through him at her words. "It doesn't have to be perfect," he said, "but you're here, and that's all that matters." The conversation drifted into comfortable silence, the sounds of the cafe around them blending into the background as they shared the moment. Ethan knew there was still a long way to go for Zara, but this moment felt like a turning point. It wasn't about finding an instant solution to all of her doubts or fears. It was about the small steps forward, the moments of understanding and acceptance that built the foundation of something more. The evening wore on, and as they left the cafe and walked down the quiet street, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle between them. They were together, navigating the unknown side by side, and for the first time, it didn't feel so overwhelming. Zara might not have all the answers, and neither did Ethan, but they were no longer trying to figure it out alone. There was something powerful in that, something simple, yet profound. And as they continued their walk into the night, the city lights twinkling around them, Ethan realized that this journey, however uncertain, was one they would face together.